Hello and welcome back to Business Matters at the Hindu with me, K. Bharat Kumar. Earlier this month, the Finland-based Centre for Research on Energy and Clean Air, or CREA, came out with a report citing 5 countries, including India, and referred to them as laundromats for Russian oil to be refined here and sent to other parts of the world. Why did it do so? Let's take a look. CREA claims that 5 nations, China, India, the UAE, Turkey, and Singapore, were laundering Russian oil, that is, buying from Russia, refining them on their respective soils, and exporting refined petroproducts to the group of 7 nations and countries in the European Union. In December 2022, the group of 7 nations, the European Union, Australia, and Japan, came together and imposed sanctions on countries that purchased oil from Russia at greater than $60 per barrel. These countries are collectively referred to as price cap coalition countries. So, if a country X buys oil from Russia at greater than $60 per barrel, then that purchasing country would not have access to services such as insurance for crude oil in transit or even tankers, and all of these owned by the price cap coalition countries. They would not provide these services to this country X. That's what it means. But apart from the 5 buyers that CREA has named, as mentioned earlier in this conversation, who else is buying Russia's fossil fuels? In a report this February, CREA itself had said that Russia's fossil fuel export revenues have fallen 50% below their 2022 peak in January-February of 2023, with revenue from exports to the EU falling almost 90%. Yet, it pointed out, Russia is making an estimated $560 million per day on export of fossil fuels. In its report, CREA also names 2 ports in India that are instrumental in receiving Russian oil and then ensuring that export of petroproducts, refined petroproducts, to Europe and other parts of the world take place. These 2 ports are Sikka and Vadinar. The Sikka port services Reliance Industries' Jamnagar refinery. It not only receives the largest quantum of imports of Russian or Urals crude grade, but is also responsible for the maximum export of petroproducts to Europe. In a report summary, CREA said that Euros 2.7 billion of petroleum products had been exported from Sikka to price cap coalition countries from December 2022 to February 2023. The Vadinar port is also in CREA's crosshairs as Russian oil giant Rosneft is a joint venture partner in Nayara's Vadinar refinery. CREA claims that this port is of great value to Rosneft as a Russian JV in a third-party country offers a possible way to circumvent the sanctions. How did India respond to the contents of the report? Our Ministry of External Affairs called the report misleading and called it also as a deceptive effort to tarnish the image of India as the world's 4th largest refiner. The ministry also said in a thread on Twitter that the report showed a lack of understanding of global supply-demand dynamics and India's long history as a major refined products exporter. The ministry says that as a sovereign country, India is free to import or export goods and commodities within the terms of international law, and calling its legitimate business as laundromat implies an illegal activity to which India strongly objects. It added that import of crude oil below $60 per barrel from Russia or elsewhere was not under any international embargo. There is also no self-embargo by a coalition country on buying diesel from refiners around the world. To use words like whitewashed oil is disingenuous at best or mischievous at worst. The government also clarified that companies based in India are free to run their legitimate businesses as per international law, and that the government did not place any restrictions on them in their legitimate business pursuits. In its statement, the ministry also pointed out that India met its energy requirements through imports from multiple countries, including Russia, and that India had never shied away from this fact, nor was it apologetic about it, as was evidenced from ministerial statements over the last year. In that report, CREA blamed the European shipping industry for allowing such revenues to be earned by Russia. Why? Because European ships or tankers were responsible for the transport of these oil cargoes all around the world. As on January 31 this year, which is about 11 months since the war began between Russia and Ukraine, CREA says that the EU, Japan, and South Korea continued to have imported about 125 million euros per day's worth of oil, gas, and coal from Russia. The chart on your screen shows that the US, Taiwan, and even European countries such as Belgium, Spain, the Netherlands, and Portugal were also buyers. Coming back to CREA's latest report, it says that 56% of Russian crude oil has been transported to what CREA calls these laundromat countries, these 5 nations that we discussed before, by tankers that are owned by or insured by these price cap coalition countries. The period for which this data has been observed was between December 2022 and the anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine war, which is February 24th of 2023. This share is 74% for refined oil products that are exported by these 5 countries for the same period. So how come this is happening? CREA blames the excessively high levels of the oil price caps as well as gaps in enforcement that are allowing the Kremlin to continue to profit handsomely off fossil fuels transported and insured by the European shipping industry. CREA argues that cutting the price cap from $60 per barrel to $30 for crude oil and to $35 per barrel for premium oil products would help cut off revenues to the tune of 150 million euros per day for Russia. This brings us to the next question. How have India's own imports behaved? Imports from Russia vis-a-vis from West Asia, on whom India had earlier depended heavily to help meet our crude oil requirements. The graphic on your screen shows that India's imports of Russian crude have surged from 1.6% of our total oil imports in March 2022 to about 34% in April this year. At the same time, imports from West Asia have dipped 23 percentage points. That brings us to the next obvious question. How much is too much? From India's point of view, is its increasing reliance on Russian crude oil a risk for India in the long term? A recent opinion article in our sister publication Business Line quoted managing partner of Energy Outlook Advisors as saying, as long as India is being opportunistic, there is no problem increasing dependence on Russian oil while stitching long-term contracts with other suppliers. But from an energy security point of view, the current situation is not sustainable and might backfire, he warned. He also pointed out that India could not afford to offend its historical and long-term suppliers, and he points out that's why imports from the US and African countries had declined substantially, while imports from the Gulf still hold a certain respectable position at 44% in the graph that we just saw. He said he expected Indian public banks with a large foreign presence to shy away from processing payments for cargoes that came in above $60 per barrel so that they would not have any retaliation from the US or Europe. Also, there are technical constraints when it comes to refining crude of the grade that we receive from Russia, which is the Urals crude. So the maximum that India could hope to have of Russian oil is about 40 to 45% of the total imports and not more. For those of you who are interested in more details of this technical constraint, here is where you'll find them. There's a URL that accompanies the text that comes alongside with this video. Go check it out, please. As we wind down this episode, what do you think India should be doing? Should it continue to remain opportunistic and look to where it gets oil cheaply? Or should it say it's too risky to depend on one country, so let me go back to West Asia and start increasing the portion of imports from that region? Leave your opinions below in the comment section. And if you're watching this on YouTube, do not forget to press like if you enjoyed this episode and share this with your friends. Also, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Have a lovely time ahead and we'll meet again next week.